So my daughter, Anne, is our other young preacher. Anne Angel now. Anne is the most tender-hearted person that I know. I've never seen anyone else cry at commercials. How can you get there so quickly? I mean, it's just like, are you kidding me? In 2011, we had just come together, and I'm trying to pastor this big church, and we've got the daycare, and we've got the school, and I'm just overfilled with issues. And Anne graduated from college, came back to live with us. She was teaching at ALCS, and she comes to me one day and says, "Dad, what are we doing for the homeless?" I don't know what we're doing for the homeless. We're doing nothing for the homeless. She says, "Dad, we need to do something for the homeless. I just saw this thing with the road home." And I'm like, "Honey, I can't do another thing, but if you'll do it, you've got permission to do it." And that's not her main area of administration, but her heart was so big, she just took over a whole ministry and started touching not just the homeless, but touching the heart of God. With Anne, she's so intimate with God. It's just her whole life, and I trust her. I'm excited. Her call to Mexico now, her and Josh, and I believe in her. And so, Anne, come and give us whatever you got, girl.
Not him. And this is my beloved sister, and I'm just so excited to be here and honored to speak at this conference that has meant so much to me for my whole life. And I don't even know. It's going to be good. So, like he said, I was a teacher over there at ALCS. I taught Spanish. I've taught English before. Right now I'm working with the Madison School District, teaching working with families that have children under 5, and I love all of that. I had the teacher blessing this week of meeting with a former student of mine, Justina, who some of you might know her, and she graduated from here. She had Spanish 3 and 4 with me, my first 2 years ever teaching Spanish. Quite a disaster. I felt like a failure all the time, but after graduating, she went to Christ for the Nations, and she took her first semester of classes normally in English, and then she decided to switch into the Spanish program. And so she finished her year all in Spanish, became bilingual in Spanish. Then she moved to Colombia and did amazing things there. So that is always very exciting as a teacher, when you don't ruin something for someone. And also when they take the little bit that you gave them and go way farther. They're motivated, and that's what I hope for us today, that I'm just going to give you a little bit, and that you'll be motivated to go much further than that, because God has a lot for us. So let me pray. Lord, Holy Spirit, thank you that you are here. Thank you that I don't have to be the teacher today, because you're here and you're the teacher. And you want these students of yours to hear your voice and to really get a picture of your heart like Devin mentioned yesterday, that intimate connection with the teacher where they hear your voice and see that what they need to do, what the next step is. Lord, we are a beat up, battered people, a world, the human race. It's not like it's new, but sometimes we don't know how to go forward in the face of the pain around us. So I pray you'd help us today, Lord. There is so much in the news, so much abuse, so many setting fires with their too short fuse. And what's the use? Pushing back, speaking out, standing up. For what? To hear sit down, quiet down, back down, get shouted down. We don't want you in this town. It seems your God is not around. You've seen how many migrants drowned? Orgies, incest, porn, rape, any help will come too late. God, you're late. And this is just hell's starting gate. They're trading strong on fear and hate. What do we do with our pain? Let's open to John chapter 11. Today, that's the first question. What do we do with pain? And the second question is, what do we do with our healing? And in one way, it's really Leslie's message again, reformed. There's the pain part, and then there's the redeemed part. There's the dead part, and then there's the life part. And so it's exciting that God, Leslie said it perfectly, but he's going to say it again a different way, and it'll maybe touch you a different way, and maybe you'll see a different need, a different spot that you didn't see. In case her orphan list wasn't enough, I'm going to give you another list so you can find yourself and find your healing. All right, so here is John chapter 11. It's the story of the death and resurrection of Lazarus. And we're going to look at each person in the story, so you can just leave it open here, and I'll read just a little bit at a time and then talk about it. So, verse 1. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha, the Mary who poured perfume on the Lord. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." When he heard this, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. And when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." And then in verse 14, he tells them plainly, Lazarus is dead. So, the first person in the story is Lazarus. The first person with pain is Lazarus. And it's also very much like Brian's message. He is dead. But I want to think about him for a while, because this Lazarus wasn't a stranger to Jesus. He was his friend. And Jesus had visited him, stayed with him, been with him. And they had this relationship. He had this intimate relationship with God. And I just imagine him getting sick, and we don't know what sickness was, but starting to feel bad. Maybe it's starting in his throat, and maybe he was throwing up. I don't know, all the horrible sickness things he can do. And first he thought he would just get better, that it would pass, that this was no big deal, that he could get through it. But then he got worse, and then it was stretching into weeks, and then he couldn't get out of bed, and he was laying there, and he must have been wondering where Jesus was. Jesus, you're my friend. I know that you heal everyone that comes to you, and here I am. Well, maybe he doesn't know I'm sick. You know, he talked himself through. Well, maybe he doesn't know. Well, maybe it's just not that big of a deal, or maybe it's not that severe of a problem, and it's going to be fine. But Jesus didn't come, and he didn't visit him when he was sick, and he didn't, obviously he didn't heal him. And so I just imagine Lazarus getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and just feeling worse and worse, and just wondering, just questioning, just asking Jesus, Where's my friend? Why isn't he here? Why is this so hard? Why am I so sick? Why is this not getting over? And he died that way. He died thinking he was abandoned, that Jesus forgot about him, that he didn't really care about him. He had no one save him from the worst. The worst happened. And no one prevented it. And I've seen a lot of this happening in the world around us. It's worse than people being sick. It's people being destroyed, smashed, smothered, abused, so crippled by pain that there's nothing left there. And it's trauma. The definition of trauma is an emotional wound or shock that causes substantial and sometimes lasting psychological development. Okay, an emotional wound or shock that causes substantial and sometimes lasting damage to psychological development. There you go. And this world is traumatic. And it's been beating me up, and it's not even like directly beating me up. I'm a secondary trauma victim, just seeing it, watching the intense suffering of other people. But there are people that are at the forefront, whose brother was shot, whose mom was shot, whose dad was shot, they themselves have been shot, that they were there, and it's so deep that they can't come to Jesus. They can't, at this current time, interact with Jesus. Lazarus, it says here, his sister sent for Jesus because he was too sick. He can't send for Jesus. And some of you here might be like Lazarus. And I'm sorry. But I'm glad you're here because Jesus is here too, and he didn't forget you, and he is coming for you, and he's the only one that can help you through the worst that has happened to you. Moving on. All right, let's skip down to verse 20. I'll start in 17. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. And Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. And Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. So here's Martha. This is the second time we meet Martha. Martha was probably the older sister of the family, I think, because in Luke 10, it says that Martha opened her house to the Lord and he came over to have dinner. So she's the big sister. And in that story, she was serving dinner and Mary was sitting at Jesus' feet. Familiar story. And Martha was concerned that she was sitting there and she was working and she wanted her to help. And she asked Jesus to have her help. So this shows us some things about Martha, that she likes to be active. She likes things to be taken care of. She's a responsible person. She's probably dutiful, and that she accepts authority. I mean, even in the situation here, she didn't say, Mary, come help me. She realized there was somebody greater than her there that was the higher authority. So she said, Lord, would you please have Mary get her butt in the kitchen? And so Martha is like many of us. We have things that we want to get done, and she's taking care of people, and she's like a planner, and she wants to have people do their part and meet with their expectations. And so now I imagine her in this situation of Lazarus getting sick. So this is her little brother, and he's getting sick, and you can imagine Martha was super active in helping him, in cooking for him, and getting his dosages right, and getting him maybe special diet, special food. She was trying to help. She's a helper. She's probably the one that told him to go lie down, to stay there, let me get it for you. And she was working, trying to fix it, trying to help him, trying to make it right. And she was probably also thinking, okay, Jesus, anytime that would be good. This is kind of hard. You've healed everybody else. I'm really struggling to keep up with this, and he's getting worse, and I'm not doing it right. And how hard is it when we try our best to fix a problem? We try our best to help somebody. We try, and we work so hard, and they don't get better. And we just feel like this failure, this sense of I'm just not good enough. All my strength isn't good enough, and we can start to feel like orphans, like I'm not impressive. I'm not substantial. I'm not powerful. I'm not all these things. And so she is breaking. You have to know that her heart is breaking, her identity is breaking, her confidence in people is breaking, in herself and Lazarus. Who knows what she thought about Mary? Maybe it was Mary just cried all the time and was no help at all, and she was probably like, you're so worthless, and I think but she's sad, she's being undone by this whole situation. And so Jesus comes, and she goes right out to meet him. She's active, she's walking around, she's not sitting around, and she comes up to him and she lays it to him straight. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. I'm disappointed. You didn't contribute. You didn't fulfill the expectation. We sent for you. That was our part. And you were going to come. That was your part. But you didn't do it. And yet, she's a good heart. She's not like rebellious or mean even. She's just like, yeah, I'm really disappointed. But then she follows it right up with, but even still, I know God will give you whatever you will ask. She's not going off into immorality and debauchery and, I don't know, hating people. She's like, you disappointed me, but I'm still going to do the right thing. And Jesus offers her right at that moment this beautiful promise. He says, your brother will rise again. And you see how she just shrugs it off? She's like, I know, he'll rise again on the last day. Yeah, I know my lessons. I know the truth. I know the right thing to believe. And it'll get better eventually. But she doesn't say, right. But she doesn't say, really? God is going to give you what you ask right now? Are you going to ask him right now for that? Because she doesn't dare to hope. She's just, you know what? That really hurt. That was awful. I don't want to think about that anymore. He'll rise again on the last day, and I'm moving on. And that's where she is. In the first time that we meet her in Luke 10, she chose work over intimacy. And I think right here she chooses right belief over intimacy. She just almost hides in believing the right thing. Yeah, you're the Son of God. Yep, you're the Messiah. Yep, you'll rise again. But it doesn't touch her heart. And as I was preparing for this message, I realized that I have been Martha lately. I've just been so overwhelmed by what's going on and so sad, but like I'm so tired of feeling sad. And you can only, this is what I tell myself, you can only break down crying so many times. And when there's like a trauma every day, and there's like bombs and civil wars and abandoned children and homeless people, and it's too hard to feel anything about it. And we went to Mexico with my dad, and the day we got back, we flew through Dallas, and the airport officer had a black ribbon on his badge, and Josh is like, "What's with the black ribbon?" And he's like, "Oh, 5 officers got shot here yesterday." And that was the first we heard of it. And it was just like, what? What's going on? But I couldn't even really, I was like, wow, that's horrible. And then I read the paper, and then I read all the things that led up to that, and then I've seen all the things that have happened since, and I just was like, well, good thing Jesus will come back at the last day. Honestly, I was just like, okay, moving on. God is good, and he's going to make it right someday, and there's going to be justice in the end, and we're all going to be happy later. And I can't really think about these things all the time because it's crippling. And so, but then as I was preparing for this message, God was like, so are you gonna process your pain or just keep waiting for the last day? Yeah, so actually, and it's just this question, and last year I was working for CareNet in Monroe, which is south in Greene County, and we went through all this training about how to talk to people that are considering abortion, how to talk to people that have had an abortion and are struggling with it, or people that are in horrible situations in which like their boyfriend's pimping them out or whatever, and you have girls coming off the street and they could be from anywhere, they could be having any trauma being done to them, and like here's how you talk them through it. And I got so heavy, I guess, just burdened, like, is God even strong enough to do that, to help her too? And part of me didn't believe it. Like Martha, look, my brother's dead. So I don't know why you're here now. There's not really anything you can do because you're too late. So I mentioned that I met up with Justina this week, and she had another key of the preparation of this. So I said that she studied Spanish, and then she went to Colombia. And while she was in Colombia, she was put in contact with this ministry called Ya Basta, which means that's enough. And it is a Christian small group study that is for healing from sexual abuse. And it's 7 weeks, and you go through it, and you tell your story, then you forgive, then you get free from, you understand Jesus is your high priest, you break perfectionism, you break chains of addiction, and you live your new life. I don't know, it's something like that. But she went through it. She got I don't know, just, she was always super joyful, super great, and I never knew anything was wrong, but she realized there were some things in her past that she had to get healed from. She went through it, and then she single-handedly, I think, translated the entire curriculum from Spanish, all the teaching sessions. Now it's in English. She's done it at her college. She's training other people to do it, and she trained me to do it on Monday. That's what I was meeting her for, and she had so many beautiful stories of just people that come in with baggage like you wouldn't believe and leave, and they say, tell everyone my story. Tell everyone my story. God is real. He's alive. I'm his. I'm healthy. I'm happy. I'm whole. And I was just like, God, you are big enough. You are big enough. You are strong enough. So let's look at Mary, and then we'll keep going. So if you are here today and you're either Lazarus or Martha, I encourage you to admit that and then try and be Mary. And why should you be Mary? It's not really glamorous, right? But she has I think the best results of processing her pain, because at the beginning of chapter 12, it says, later on, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table. And Mary took a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. And we talk about Mary right there a lot. But I just want you to notice that Martha is serving. She's still working. Which is great. She's still waiting for the last day, okay? But Mary has gone to a new level of intimacy. Usually, before she was sitting at Jesus' feet receiving his teaching. But now, after her brother's been raised from the dead and she had this miracle, she becomes the symbol for the church through the ages of abandoned, extravagant love for the Lord. So maybe Mary had something, maybe her response had something to do with her result. So, Mary, verse 28. After Martha had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here for you, she said, and he's asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. And Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in her house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. So here's Mary. And I think let's think about her in the process. So she was the closest to Jesus, maybe, because we don't see Lazarus in the first story, but Mary was there at his feet, and she was had this intimacy, and she chose the good part. She really believed. She loved him. And it's interesting, though, when she heard that Jesus had come, she didn't go out to him. And I think that as she had watched her brother lay dying and couldn't help and not getting better, and Jesus wasn't coming, and they sent for him and he didn't come, that she had begun to doubt if her intimacy with Jesus was real, if he really loved her the way that she loved him, like she had thought it was this mutual thing. But he didn't come, and so maybe she started to question, does he really care? Does he really love me? And I think even maybe she felt ashamed, like maybe I was too extravagant or too forward, because I think her question was, does he even want to see me? Does he even want to see me? I don't know, maybe I just misread everything and I was wrong. And I think that because it says when she heard that Jesus was asking for her, she got up quickly. So it wasn't like she was bitterly resenting everything, because then she would have still been like, well, I don't care if he's asking for me. I don't want to go out to him. But when she heard he was asking for her, she's like, really? Okay, I'll go. And it reinstated her faith, like, he does care. He does want to see me, so now I can go to him. And she just falls at his feet and bares her heart and just says the same thing Martha said, but with no extra statements of control or keeping it together or I still have the right faith or whatever, but just, Lord, if you had been here, he wouldn't have died, and just weeps before him. And some of you are in pain, and some of you might be in the wondering stage. You're wondering, well, does he really love me, or does he really want to see me? And I just want you to know that he's asking for you. He does want you to come out. He does want to see where you are. So come to him. And then I think all of us need to be Mary in showing our hearts to God and show him what is bothering us and hurting us. Like David was a man after God's heart. He's famous in the Psalm for pouring out his emotions before God, because pouring out your emotions at the feet of Jesus is the safest place for you to do that. And it's the place with the best results too, because you cry it out. You name your pain. You say, this hurts me, Papa. And you're on your daddy's lap. Like, this hurts. And once you say it, then you're not hiding it anymore. You're not protecting yourself. You're not lighting your own torch. You're not making your own road. You're just saying, look, this hurts. And I don't understand. And once you know that he knows, then you can let it go. And he can take it up. This story, this chapter of the Bible came alive to me when my brother decided not to be a Christian anymore. And for a while, I was Martha, and I just was like, oh, bad idea. You're wrong. I don't know, like, you'll find out one day. Until I just realized how much grief was there. Like, Christina was here this morning, but Matt should have been here. And I'm preaching, but Matt should be preaching. And I need to tell God about that and grieve before him so that I can let it go, so that I don't treat Matt the wrong way, so I don't build walls to protect myself, so I don't push him away. I cry that out before God, and then I can watch what he's going to do. Whew. All right. Enough of the crying part. Now, what do we do with our healing? Ooh, as sons and daughters. So let's look at this story again, and I'm just gonna bing, bop, what Jesus was doing, and how he can respond, and how we can respond in the face of pain. So, number one, Jesus loved the dead man and his sisters. Jesus loved the dead. Now, I've been having trouble loving the dead. Some people in my life, there's, some people that I want to cut them off. I want to not be in their life because they're so messed up and they're making bad choices and they are not healthy, they don't give to me. It's not a reciprocal relationship. They're just dead, and I want to cut them off. But Jesus didn't do that. He loved the dead. and he loved the morning. And so that's a challenge for us, but we can do it when we know God's love for us. So number 2, I have them. I wrote 1, 2, 3, 4 in here. So that was verse 5. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister Lazarus. Okay. And now number 2 is, I am going there to wake him up. That's 11:11. It's one of our family's verses. Whenever the clock turns 11:11, we say that. I am going there to wake him up. Jesus is on a mission. He's on a mission to find the dead and to raise them. And he knows where they are, and he knows where their tomb is, and all that stuff, and he knows who's hurting because that person's dead. And he's going to go there. Number 3, I like. In verse 14, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. Look at that. That is just the picture of supreme confidence. It's like, yeah, he was sick and I could have healed him. That would have been something. But he's dead now. And I'm glad, because you are going to believe more. Because when you see this person walking around alive, on fire for God, then you're going to believe. And so he is not intimidated by the problem. He's not intimidated by the darkness, by the pain, by anything. He's like, that's fine. I've got it. And so I need more of that confidence in my life. Number 4, he says, but let us go to him. And that's just easy. He brought others along with him. He didn't just, I'll just work with this person for years and years and years, and it'll just be between us two. He's like, no, look, come here. No, look what I can do. Look, see that dead guy? Yeah, he's coming back to life, and I have that power, and you can have that power, so stop being intimidated and stop being scared. Number 4, 5, whatever we're on, he says in verse 39, take away the stone. But Lord, said Martha, wanting to keep things kosher, it's kind of stinky in there. He says, yeah, I don't care. I'll roll it away. So he overturns expectations. He goes to the unexpected place and does unexpected things there. And we, as his children, are sometimes called to be unexpected. If you want to hear some stories of unexpected encounters, listen to Todd White speak ever. But he's just like praying for hostile stewardesses on the airplane, and people are like dying in the floor, and then he heals that person, and the stewardess is freaked out and says, you got to sit down or you got to get off the flight. And he's like, don't worry, God is here. And I know you don't believe in God, but he told me this about you. And then it's just crazy. It's really good to obey stewardesses, but flight attendants, sorry. But sometimes, I guess, God might not have you fulfill that expectation. So just be ready for that. Verse 41. So they took away the stone, and Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here. That, again, confidence. He's confident in his intimacy with his Father. He's like, I am not begging here. I am not trying to get your attention here. I know you always hear me. Can you just say that? I know you always hear me. God always hears you. He's not late. He's not going to abandon you no matter what it feels like. From heaven's view, you just say, God, I know you always hear me. And then he commands life by name. So in 43, it says, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. He called that dead person by name. That dead place, that hurt, that whatever it is, sexual abuse, come out. Matthew Thomas Flaherty, come out. United States of America, come forth.
So I'll finish my poem. So wait, that gate, Hell's Gate, it can't prevail. It's done its best with thorn and nail. And we attest that test was one big fail. Because the King of life brings life from death, light to dark, and from mud, breath. No corpse, no tomb is beyond his reach. To each he speaks, commands, entreats. Don't weep. Repent. Come forth. Be sent. Like sheep among wolves, but sheep with a secret. Sheep with a witness and the power to preach it. I was dead, and I'm alive. It's true. And the same God who raised me, through me, can raise you. So watch out, Lazarus. The church is about, and when they get to your grave, they're bringing you out. Why don't you give the altar call?
I'm not even, you know.
Just yell it.
Yell it. Jesus. We love you, Jesus. Thank you, God, for transforming us into the kingdom of your beloved Son. Thank you, God, that he is our elder brother and we get to have his confidence to raise the dead and to just believe for the greater things. If you're here today and we're just going to open up the altar time. There's going to be worship music going, and there's going to be some people praying. If you want prayer for any of the things that were coming up in your heart today, if you're just like, man, I want to get rid of this orphan spirit, like I'm done, I'm a son, I'm a daughter, and I want to live like that, I want you to come up here and just lay that at the altar and tell the Lord that you're ready to go to the next level of revelation of sonship. And if you're here today and you're like, I want that purpose of mothering and fathering sons and daughters and leaving a legacy and walking in purpose, and I want to adopt orphans and be their spiritual mom and dad, and see the kingdom and the family of God restored, then I want you to just come up here and tell him that and worship at his feet and let him speak to you. And if you've been a Lazarus and you've been, the worst has happened to you, and you're in pain and you're in despair and you think Jesus has forgotten you, and you feel like your last dying moment is just the rejection and the abandonment, where the person you thought was your friend and cared didn't come to save you and to rescue you from your situation. I want you to know he is raising you to life. He is giving you abundant life in every area of pain that you have. It's not too big for him. None of your problems, none of your situations, none of your pain is too big for him to take care of. You cannot scare him away. You can be dead as dead can be. You can be 4 days dead and he will raise you up. So just come up here and let him raise you. And if you are the Martha who's been doing all the right things and it still didn't work, and you're just tired and you're weary of doing good things, and you just think, someday God will come, someday God will do something, but for now I'm just going to close off my heart to hope, and you want God to resurrect hope in your life. He wants to do that today, and I just want you to come up here and receive that. And if you're a Mary and you just thought he forgot about you, you misread his love for you, you misread the connection you had, you thought you had greater intimacy with him, you thought he could be trusted, and he's calling for you, and he's sending for you, and he's saying, come and be with me, I'm calling for you. So let's just run to him today and worship him and receive from him. And body of Christ, feel released to pray for each other. If you get a word for someone as you're praying, if you want to go up and lay hands on someone, if you just want to love on your brothers and sisters, let's be family today and go from pain to glory. Go from orphan to son. Go from dead to resurrected. If you'll just stand with me. Jesus, our eyes are on you. We fix our eyes on you. We fix our gaze on you. You are the beloved Son. Jesus, we love you. We worship you. And we receive today the gift that you have for us. Thank you, Jesus.